Welcome to Carbon Conversations, a podcast by Biochar Life, where we explore the cutting edge of environmental solutions. From biochar to smart agriculture to the climate tech revolution, we sit down with experts and business leaders at the forefront of change. This is your host, Matt Rickard. Hey, Alex, good morning. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Great, Matt. Thank you very much for having me here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Good that we're in the same kind of time zone, right? I think last time we chatted, you were in a completely different time zone on the other side of the world. But I know you've been doing a bit of a tour, right? You're in Singapore today?
Yeah. I'm in Singapore right now. I was visiting some neighboring countries, Indonesia, Malaysia, and we were participating in an event here in Singapore. So it's been really nice to be here and to interact with the people and the actors of the carbon market here.
Great. So, look, we're going to chat about the work you do, Cercarbono. But before we get into that, maybe just a little bit of an introduction, some background on yourself. I know you've been working in sustainability, environmental policy for 20 plus years, maybe. So definitely an interesting journey into the work you do with Cercarbono. So I don't do it an injustice maybe for the audience, if you can give us a bit of background, introduction, and before we get into the other details.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Matt. I'm an industrial engineer and a political scientist as well. So I have the two degrees. And I did a master on sustainable development and conservation biology in the University of Maryland in the US. And since I graduated from undergrad, I've been working on sustainability issues. Firstly, in the areas of cleaner production and circular economy, advising companies, associations, advising government on how to implement cleaner production and circular economy policy, and also how to implement sustainability strategy within the companies. And then I had the opportunity to work for the Colombian government. Firstly, as director for sectorial affairs. So I was in charge of all policy development for sectors like mining sector, agricultural sector, and so on. And then as the climate change director for the Ministry of Environment. So I was in charge also for policy for climate action, NDCs, long-term plans, and carbon markets. After I resigned at the Ministry of Environment, I became the CEO of Cercarbono, which is a carbon standard from Latin America, the most important one, the biggest one from Latin America. And my main goal as the CEO is to position Cercarbono at the global level.
Cool. So I think, look, thanks for that. And quite a natural progression, I think, from obviously your background and the work you do into designing, managing standards. I mean, in terms of Cercarbono, what is different in terms of the standards that you design? How do they differ from other standards out there, and how do you ensure kind of credibility around the projects that you certify? It'd be good to understand a bit more of the depth around the certification process.
Perfect. I will tell you something about like the origins of Cercarbono, because a lot of our differences lies on its origins. So we are a standard that were born in the context of the Colombian carbon tax. In Colombia was one of the first countries globally to implement a carbon tax with a compensation mechanism.
Yeah.
So at that time, there was no a lot of presence of a standard in the country. And also there were not suitable methodologies for the conditions of the developing world and for the tropical areas of the world. So we developed the standard 2017 with some novel methodologies on RED Plus, on reforestation, on renewable energy. And at the same time, we really focus on technology, on how to include technology within the whole certification process. And our methodologies with really focus also on community engagement, on safeguards, and on the applicability within the territory. So we grew up a lot in Colombia. In fact, we are the main standard right now in Colombia, and we have been increasing our presence globally, mainly Latin America, but then also in other countries in Africa, in Turkey, and Southeast Asia as well. So right now we are in more than 20 countries. We have projects in more than 20 countries. And just to answer your question, there are some important differences. The first one is that we try to understand the local conditions of countries and the particularities of the territory. So our methodologies allow you to, have some kind of flexibility in order to comply with those local conditions. That's one of the important things. The second one is that we really focus on community engagement. We have a strong safeguard principles, I think, are the strongest in the market right now, in which we, like invite project developers in order to comply with everything regarding the engagement of community, the ownership of the credits. We have a clear and unambiguous credit ownership. So in our case, the project our holders are the communities that are involved and that are present in these areas, and the project developers are intermediaries. So we clearly state that in our certification report and also in the credit ownership. So the communities are invited um, to create an account into the registry to deposit the credits once they are issued.
Yeah.
No, so there is a huge difference there. The third part has to be with the technology. So we are a standard setter, and we have a company that is called Eco Registry that provides the whole technology for the registration, certification, and registration process. So we are two independent companies. So we focus on creating the methodologies and the protocol and the certification process, and they focus on technology.
Yeah.
So in that sense, all the certification process, we have a different approach, a more hands-on approach. So when a project comes into Cercarbono, uh, we all the certification is done through the platform. So the project developer needs to upload all the documentation through the platform, and we review the project before it's put it into public comments. We do that complete review, and then we start doing changes requests to the project through the platform. So the project developer also answers through the platform, and the BBB also answers through the platform. So we have a complete track of what is happening through the certification process. So that gives us a lot of transparency and traceability on the process. So at the end, when we certify a project, you can see, in fact, in the platform, the different versions of the PVD that has been updated based on all the recommendations and all the requirements during the certification process. We don't have any problem on having direct interaction with the project developers, with the BBBs, because we think that really adds into the robustness of the whole certification process. So this approach allows us to be more efficient during the certification. tackling the most important things, also help us on build on the quality, on the final quality of the certified project, because we try to tackle every aspect during the certification process. So this more efficient process gives you less certification time, and more quality at the same time.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that the less the time, the less the quality. No, that's the two aspects are at the same time. Yeah.
Cool. I really want to drill down into a couple of things there, but just to get acronyms explained for the audience, BBB, just give me the what.
Okay. A validation and verification body. So
Right. Okay. Cool.
this
VBB.
validation and
VBB. Got
verification.
you. Okay. Cool.
VBB. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, I just want to drill down a little bit more on the community engagement piece because it sounds super interesting. You know, our journey with Biochar Life going back a number of years. So we've been working with farmers for more than a decade, but we were instrumental, I suppose, in developing a standard around smallholder farmers. So I think a lot of parallels in terms of the work you do. But if I understood correctly there, you're saying that the actual, at the community layer, the community end up being the owner of ultimately the credit. Did I understand that correctly? And the project developer is really an intermediary that is managing the process. I suppose my first question, did I understand that correctly? And then I've got some questions around that, but
Yeah, that's correct. So one of the things that we innovated recently is that every time that a project is being, that there are community related,
yeah,
and there are community presence, the project developer needs to identify pretty clearly all the communities that are present in that area. They have to identify also what is the governance of the community. So who are the governance bodies that has the, the the power in order to make the decisions for the community.
yeah,
So they need to clearly identify what is the governance, with also not with legal documents. So, for example, in Latin America or in Colombia specifically, the Ministry of the Interior, which is a governmental entity, they issue a regulation in which they identify where are the legal communities for each area. So they need to go to these legal documents in order to identify the communities, to identify the governance, and to identify the people who is legally responsible for making a decision of that communities.
yeah,
So once they identify them, we need to issue an account into the registry system to these communities, and to identify them as the project holder of the project. So they are the project owners, and based on the agreements that the community has with the project developer, so we send the credits on a percentage to the community and a
yeah.
percentage to the project developer based on those agreements. So in that sense, we protect the ownership and the communities, and we ensure that they have the assets, which is the carbon credit, on their name, and they can be able to negotiate also with these credits.
Great idea. Yeah, I mean, it's something that we've looked into. I think part of my question was going to be, I think you kind of answered it anyway, was from a technology kind of standpoint and the engagement. The project developer deals with everything at the technology layer, right? But ultimately, you're licensing into the community, so they have ownership of the credit, which they should do because it's coming from their environmental area. So yeah, that was going to be my question, which you kind of answered. So.
Yeah. In fact, it is like that, and we have seen that some communities has been increasing their capacity on dealing with the projects, and some communities, in fact, has asked us to that the next verification, they wants to be in charge of the next verification.
Yeah.
So that's a really slow process because there is a huge gap of knowledge on how to develop a carbon project. But I think we are going in the right path, empowering the communities and giving them the ability to manage some things around the carbon credits that they own.
Yeah, definitely. I think if we can get to that, and maybe we're not far away, I think just as technology becomes even more accessible, which it is in so many kind of regional areas anyway, but the more that can get right down to the community layer. So, but perhaps a good segue into this question. I mean, in terms of carbon standards in developing economies, which is what you're working on, what are the major challenges, and what do you see that needs to change or evolve in this area to make it more accessible, make it easier?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because there are many challenges, and there will be many challenges in the future as well. I don't think that we will reach a stage in where everything is okay. I think this is a continuous improvement, and quality and integrity will be evolving during the time. Um, so there are many things. I think building capacity is pretty important. Uh, Building capacity in communities is most important. Uh, there are some really nice stories about project developers going to communities and talking them about carbon, and they imagine coal. No, so there is a huge process of them trying to understand, what is carbon, how carbon can be captured, or how carbon can be avoided. So it's really important to level down all the technicism and all the acronym that we use when we are. I think building capacity is really important at the community level. Also, building capacity at the government level. I think right now, when we are dealing with the operationalization of Article 6, there is still a lot of lack of understanding on governments, on what that means and how to implement that, and how can the different actors what is the role that different actors could play in the whole mechanism. So uh, there is a work that we should do with governments in order to tell them how to, or building capacity on how to implement. And not only focusing on the Ministry of Environment, which really happens in the context of Latin America, but expanding the reach on other ministries, like Finance Ministry, like Development Ministry, like Industry Ministry, so that they could build the correct and the right policies in order to implement carbon markets. The third one, which lies pretty into the space of carbon standards, is uh, implementing more technology. We have been innovating a lot in that sense, and that's on the core of Cercarbono, with the registry we work with, uh, because what the market suffers right now is the long-term period in order to be certified. So we have been working a lot in order um, to enhance the capability of our system, to include new functionalities, so you can track all the progress of the certification process through the system, and to help not only project developer teams and validation and verification bodies teams, but also the certification team to go through the whole certification system. And technology could also help governments to deal with many things. And in this sense, I want to put an example. Cercarbono is a carbon standard that is approved for the Chilean carbon tax. And we have been working pretty closely with the Chilean government in order them to use the platform for their information demand purposes. So we are trying to build like like an account for them, uh, just not to be like outliers seeing every project, but to control the whole, projects and to know statistics about the projects that has been applied for the compensation mechanism of the country, and to identify those credits that has been compensated and offset, and those who are on the potential. So that kind of things that really helps build communication between the different parties. So and on the third side, on the fourth side, like building third side, building capacity, technology uh, is also on how we just continue to integrate the best practices onto our methodologies and onto our protocol and procedures. So since the market is evolving too much, and every day there are new things and new requirements from CORSIA, from ICBCM, so there is a challenge on maintaining our protocol and our methodologies updated with all those requirements, and that needs a lot of like a team dedicated to identify those new coming rules and new coming requirements to update, and to not only to update but to communicate to the different parties the updates that we have done into our protocol and procedures and methodologies.
How do you talk a lot about government, which is interesting, and we'll talk a bit about your travel in a minute. Maybe I'd be interested to hear your perception of what you're seeing around this part of the world. But in terms of the role of government versus the private sector in what is really essentially still a voluntary market, there are some things shifting and changing. How do you see the different roles there, and what do you think needs to happen? I mean, do you see government really being the force for the ultimate kind of future success, or do you think the private sector will continue to need to step up and invest in what is a voluntary market in so many places?
There are the role of governments are key to catalyze carbon markets around the world. I think governments have a power to drive new markets, as has happened in many countries. For example, carbon pricing mechanisms like the carbon tax is really easy to implement. It's really easy to enforce, and that really catalyzes carbon action within a country. That's the example of Colombia. That's the example of Chile. That's the example of the state of Querétaro in Mexico. That when the carbon tax was implemented, you see a lot of interest and a lot of action on project developers, validation and verification bodies, standards. So I think the role of the government is more an enabler.
Yeah.
So how do you do policies to enable, the function of a carbon market? And the private sector is really important as at the same time to have clear rules on how to develop, on how to move within the country, on how to behave within this ruling. What I don't see is governments to be central and to be the one who drive all the actions on carbon market. I should explain more myself. Like, I don't see that the government should have a role on developing their own standard, developing their own registries. Maybe the registry, yes, because it's information that is vital for making decisions in the country. but making their own standards, certifying their own projects, because it's not into the DNA of the governments. They will need strong teams to keep all the system updated and cope with all the of the volume of job and work that they have to do in order to certify the project. So um, a really nice solution could be that the government focus on ruling and regulation on the conditions how markets should develop, and then the private sector could be have like a, in the case of a standard, like an endorsement for a standard based on some quality issues and some other endorsement issues, uh, and uh, based on that endorsement, we can certify the project, and then the government could do a check on the projects just to approve them to be for Article 6.2, for Article 6.4, for um, uh, um, carbon taxes, and so on, like kind of an homologation. And then we can work together in order to align and connect our registries to the registries in order to work on a really steady flow of the information between the standards and the government. So um, in that sense, I think we become more efficient on the way to work. We reduce fragmentation because it's not too good that many governments has different standards. We work on to merging all the efforts that we are doing among the governments and the standards and the project developers and so on.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think this kind of intergovernment kind of relationships around some of these projects will be important as well, like you say, because even in the industry now, just when you look at the amount of standards and the layers of process that is already there, we kind of want more government involvement, but you also don't want to layer on too much complexity in terms of getting from the community to the end buyer, which is ultimately the kind of supply chain, right? So
yeah, and I believe that the regulation is necessary. It's pretty necessary to put clear conditions on how carbon markets and projects should be developed, and and the criteria to be developed. That give uh, to all stakeholders, project developers, communities, standards, and so on, all the clear rule and a clear rule on how to work on a certain environment and a certain region. So that's pretty good. But we, as the private sector, we have the all the processes, all the efficient processes, and all the knowledge and all the capacity in order to make those like process happen in a timely manner, in an efficient manner, and with a really good quality and integrity manner as well.
it makes sense. I wanted to shift track slightly and ask a little bit about biodiversity, biodiversity space, biodiversity credits. Like we've been doing some work actually with a organization out of Brazil in the biodiversity space. So it's something that, I've kind of had somewhat of a focus on, but biodiversity credits are starting to gain some sort of traction, or at least there's definitely conversations happening. Certainly for us, it's something that we would love to see adopted more, because I think it encompasses way more than just the environmental piece. What is your view on biodiversity credits? Do you see traction being gained? Where do you see them sitting alongside, carbon credits or the carbon markets?
Yeah.
Is it something different? Is it integrated? Yeah, really interested to hear, your view on that whole space.
Yeah, that's a really nice topic to talk about, Matt, because um, the first question that I should answer is why biodiversity credits, and why to talk about that, because that lies on the importance of biodiversity credits. Um, Conservation and restoration activities and funding of conservation and restoration activities has been exclusively, basically, under the realm of NGOs and international government cooperation and multilateral funds cooperation. So the funds generally goes to the governments. Then the governments arrange with NGOs, and NGOs implement, conservation and restoration activities within the countries. And I'm not saying that's not good. That's really good. But at some point, when there is a particular community or a private entity that wants to do restoration or conservation efforts, they don't find the means to get the funding to implement their projects. So many people has come to Cercarbono to see if their conservation or restoration activities can be certified for carbon, and we have to say no because it's pretty less carbon for all the effort, few carbon for all the effort, so it's not economical viable. So we thought that all this carbon credit mechanism should be a really good way to channel funding to these kind of activities in the field, and to take funds directly from companies to the territory. So that's why we think biodiversity credits could be a really good contribution into filling this biodiversity finance gap that has been talked around COP16, was one of the main issues around COP16. So what we have done in Cercarbono, we took, based on all our knowledge, on our know-how on how to certify projects and certify projects with an independent body, and with a pretty clear criteria on additionality, on integrity, on quality, and so on. So we built a biodiversity program, and we partner with a company called Sabimbo, which they are working in the Colombian Amazon protecting jaguars, and they develop a methodology on indicative species. So we build a new biodiversity program for issuing biodiversity credits using indicative species. But then part of your question is how this can escalate. I think the best, like the most important bottleneck for biodiversity market to escalate is the unit. We don't have a unified unit. It's a kind of redundant. But we need a unit like ton of CO2 in the biodiversity space, so we can build a really good market. So people can compare credits from projects that are being developed in Tanzania, projects that have been developed in Colombia, in Brazil, in Laos, in Vietnam, and see them as equivalent.
Yeah.
So being treated as a fungible asset. We have done some strides on that direction. We adopted a unit that has been also proposed by Sabimbo and by a group that they have been working with. This is a unit that is open for other standards to being adopted and used. So we felt compelled by that openness of the unit and the capability that others can use it. So in that sense, we think we are going the right path towards, creating a real and a clear biodiversity market, which is really important to channel funding into specific activities in the territory.
That's super interesting. I won't go down the rabbit hole on it, but it has got my mind thinking about it. So, because what you just said then is absolutely critical. It's being able to just have a kind of tangible kind of measurement, like, which is very easy with carbon. I mean, it's super easy. You can have a myriad of different projects, but your end result, when you've got all that data and the MRV is in place, is a tangible removal of a ton, right? So with biodiversity, but with biodiversity, so you're saying there's, because I would have imagined it's still quite nuanced depending on the type of biodiversity, but are you trying to have a singular measure essentially for, or will there be different types of credits?
Yeah, so the credit is the same. Is the formula of the credit is based on integrity per area per time, and everything is defined in the integrity side. So, for example, the first project that we are certifying is a project of conservation of jaguars in the Colombian Amazon. So, jaguar, when you see a jaguar in the jungle, that means in that jungle, no, that means that the ecosystem around in that area is healthy and has a really like an intact ecosystem, because that means that all the trophic, all the species are present if the jaguar is present, no? But the same happens on a high mountain ecosystem in Colombia that is called páramos. When the spectacle bear is, is presence in that ecosystem, it means that the ecosystem is healthy as well. So you can develop one project in the Amazon, and you can develop other project in the high mountain region and the Páramos in Colombia, and the units that will be issued are the same.
Yeah, right.
No, because they showed almost the same. No, so, and also a characteristic of our unit is that it has a cap on the amount that you issue. For example, if you reach the integrity of one, you can just issue 12 credits per year.
Yeah.
So that makes, if you see the bear on in this ecosystem on a daily basis, and also the jaguar, so you can just 12 credits per year. So that makes it also fungible. In terms of restoration, what we do is to the project needs to ecosystem, assess what is the integrity of the ecosystem in that time, and assess what should be the optimal integrity of one in that ecosystem. And the difference between the baseline and the optimal condition of integrity, that difference is what we are crediting to the projects. So is kind of standardize the unit, but at the same time looks for the singular characteristics of each project and each ecosystem that you are working with.
Cool. Love it. Makes a lot of sense. I really like it. It's given me, I wish we could do the same with kind of social impact and community, where you could have a measure of the community impact, social impact within the credit. It'd be great. Co-benefits are so important, but they're just kind of reported on so widely. Whereas, anyway, this is almost like, I don't want to turn it into a brainstorming session, but it'd be great to have a kind of measure of social impact that could be that accurate, where you could have, almost a social impact credit, a biodiversity credit, a standard carbon removal credit, great. I think these things are really important to give, just more insight into the impact layer of what's done, because it's never just as simple as the environmental piece, right? So.
Yeah, that's in fact, it's a really good idea. We are working right now in a tool that we call it like the financial disclosure tool, because we want to invite project developers to disclose how the benefits are being spread into the communities. And this financial disclosure tool has some indicators on the social basis as well, which every verification that you do on the project should be disclosed. So at the same time shows the moving state of the picture. So that's really important. That's a really good idea.
Cool stuff. Look, as we draw to a close, I'm going to get you details in a minute, but I think probably a nice way to close is just getting your kind of vision, your perspective on, how do you see the market evolving over the next decade, particularly with emerging economies in mind. What are the things you're seeing that you're excited about, particularly with the fact you've also been traveling around Southeast Asia a little bit in the last few weeks?
Yeah. So I will split that answer in two, for Cercarbono and for the market in general. So for Cercarbono, we are not a new standard, but we are a standard with a relative non new for many stakeholders. We have been here for more than 8 years right now, and in fact, we account for third, fourth standard globally in terms of issuances and retirements. So our perspective is that many project developers wants to try, and many buyers wants to try new options, wants to have more efficiency into the certification process. So our value proposal lies on that, with high integrity. We are working towards getting CORSIA and ICBCM. We are conditionally approved by CORSIA. We think that this year we are meeting all the requirements of CORSIA, and I'm pretty optimistic of being accepted, us being accepted in CORSIA this year, and the same for ICBCM. So once we get ICBCM and CORSIA, I think the market will start, demanding more Cercarbono and asking for more projects in Cercarbono. So that's our main goal in the short term, and that's our perspective. And the second part of the answer on the whole market, I think it was really good that we got an agreement in Baku for Article 6, 6.2 and 6.4. I think Article 6.2 will be really key for governments, but they need governments right now to really dig on the details, and now the bottlenecks is on the government. So we need to work really closely with governments in order to make Article 6.2 and Article 6.4 happen. Because all the things around corresponding adjustment is not easy, and all the things around getting the corresponding adjustment included into the inventories and into the reports is not easy as well. So we need to give strong support to the government in order to get that done. And I see a lot of interest. I'm pretty optimistic about the market. Many companies are starting working on climate action. I don't think we have reached the potential right now, and all the odds are that we are expecting 20-fold, 50-fold increase on the market from here to 2030. So we are pretty optimistic, and we are working towards that.
Cool. Alex, I didn't have any more questions, although actually I think there's a lot more we could talk about just within the subjects we've covered. So it's been super interesting. I'd love to dive into some of the, particularly the biodiversity stuff, I think, that we talked about near the end there. But yeah, if there was anything I didn't ask that you want to share, please do. Otherwise, also, where can people find out more about, Cercarbono? Where can they get in touch with yourself if you'd like to share your details? And I'll also include those in the speaker notes for anyone watching or listening.
No, it has been a really nice conversation, Matt. Thank you very much. I also think that the biodiversity topic is really, really pleasant to talk about, because it's carbon is at some point not that tangible, but when you talk about biodiversity, you talk about something you can see, you can touch, you can feel, and that's pretty important. And I think that lies also on the importance of the nature-based solutions that not only protects and helps store the storage of carbon, but helps protect all the ecosystem services. In our side, we have also been working on a circular economy program. We the same rationale of biodiversity markets we have it for circular economy. I think there is a lack of funding on circular economy activities worldwide, on recycling. Prices of materials when you recycle them at some point don't pay all the efforts that you are doing. So we put in place a circular economy program starting with plastics. We also are pretty optimistic of this kind of markets. And just to finalize, in Cercarbono, you can find more information in our website. We are doing a lot of things, a lot of things. We are a small team, but we are pretty efficient. We are pretty focused on what we do and what we want. And we want to be a really driver of really good quality integrity projects with really focus on communities and indigenous people's rights. So on our website cercarbono.com you can find all the information that we have. I'm pretty happy to participate in a new conversation, Matt. Has been a pleasure.
Cool. I will, for anyone watching and listening, I'll leave, obviously, in the notes, the links to the website, but also anything around circular economy or biodiversity links. I'll leave those in there as well if you want to share them. So, and also for the audience, I know there's been a rather noisy bird in the background throughout this podcast, but maybe that's quite apt as we were talking about biodiversity. So not a bad thing, I think. So cool. Alex, look, it's been great, and enjoy the rest of your time in the region, and safe travels home. And yeah, let's do this again sometime.
Thank you very much, Matt, for the opportunity. I'm happy to be here again.
Cheers.